Welcome to a deep dive into a case that really shook France back in the 1930s. The story of Christine and Leah Papin.
Yeah.
It's a story about a brutal double murder.
Right.
Committed by these two maids.
Two seemingly ordinary maids.
Right. And it was so shocking that it really captivated people back then.
Oh, absolutely.
And even, intellectuals and philosophers.
It sparked a lot of debate in intellectual circles.
Yeah.
I mean, thinkers like Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre,
Right.
they saw this Papin case as like a window into the dark side of society.
Yeah.
A reflection of class struggle, the resentment that simmers between the haves and the have-nots.
It became more than just a crime.
Right.
It became this symbol.
Exactly.
So for this deep dive, we have articles, court transcripts.
Wow.
We even have some psychological analyses from back then.
Fascinating.
What we're trying to do today is understand,
Right.
what led these women
To do such a horrific thing.
to commit such a shocking act.
Yeah. And why this crime?
Out of all the crimes.
Right.
Yeah, why this one became this cultural touchstone.
It's a story full of twists and turns.
Okay.
To really understand it.
Yeah.
We need to start at the beginning.
Okay.
With their childhood.
All right, so let's rewind the clock.
Okay.
Take us back to their early lives.
So imagine this.
Okay.
A broken family, absent mother,
Right.
whispers of abuse.
Oh, wow.
And then on top of all of that,
Yeah.
being sent to a notoriously strict Catholic orphanage.
Wow.
That was their reality.
That's a lot for anyone to handle.
A lot for a young child.
Yeah, let alone young girls.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like the kind of upbringing that would leave some pretty deep scars.
Absolutely. We can't say for certain how much this directly shaped their actions later in life.
Yeah.
But we know that childhood trauma, especially institutionalization,
Right.
it can have this ripple effect
Yeah.
throughout a person's life. It impacts their development, their ability to form healthy relationships, their sense of trust.
Right.
It can even influence their capacity for violence.
It almost sounds like this foundation for a very dark story was laid very early on. So then they end up working for this Lancelin family in 1926.
Right.
Did things get any better for them?
Initially, it seemed like they had found some stability.
Okay.
They were working as live-in maids for the Lancelins, a seemingly normal bourgeois family in Le Mans.
Okay.
The father was a retired lawyer.
Right.
They had a daughter named Genevieve. And at first, the sisters were model employees.
Okay.
Dedicated, hardworking, the whole nine yards.
Right.
But then things started to shift.
What happened? Did the relationship sour?
Well, according to reports, Madame Lancelin, she suffered from depression.
Yeah.
And her behavior toward the sisters became increasingly erratic.
Oh, wow.
In fact, some accounts even describe it as downright abusive.
You bring up Madame Lancelin's mental health. Do you think that played a role in how she treated the sisters?
Absolutely. I
know
mean,
of that.
there are always power dynamics at play, especially in a situation like this.
Right.
Remember, this was the 1930s.
Yeah.
Live-in maids back then were essentially trapped in a system that gave them very little autonomy or protection.
Right.
They were completely dependent on their employers,
Yeah.
isolated from the outside world. If their employer was abusive, there was very little recourse.
So this is like a pressure cooker just waiting to explode.
Yeah.
So then comes that fateful night.
Right.
February 2nd, 1933.
1933.
And the trigger, from what I understand, was something as mundane as a faulty iron and a power outage.
A power outage, you read that right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
A seemingly insignificant incident that set off this horrific chain of events.
Yeah.
Madame Lancelin apparently confronted the sisters about this outage, and things escalated quickly and violently.
Wait, so a faulty iron led to murder?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine how something so trivial could spiral so far out of control.
Right.
So what happened next?
The details are brutal.
Yeah.
Madame Lancelin and her daughter Genevieve.
Right.
They were beaten and stabbed and mutilated.
Wow.
The level of rage is almost unimaginable.
Yeah, you said the sisters confessed.
Right away. Yeah.
But claimed self-defense.
Uh-huh.
I mean, how could anyone believe that?
Right.
Given the
I
brutality.
mean, the court was skeptical.
Yeah.
But during the trial, this really interesting psychological debate unfolded.
Okay.
The defense argued that the sisters were driven to temporary insanity. They were pointing to the family history of mental illness.
I remember reading that their uncle had committed suicide.
Right.
And a cousin was institutionalized.
Yeah, so there was evidence to support this claim.
Right.
It added weight to the idea that there might be a genetic predisposition to mental instability.
Okay.
And then, get this, 3 court-appointed doctors evaluated Christine and Leah,
Okay.
and their observations were pretty intriguing.
What did they say?
They noted that both sisters exhibited these odd behaviors.
Okay.
You know, limited eye contact, a flat affect. It's almost like they were in a daze.
So were the doctors able to shed any light on the sister's mental state? I mean, did they come up with a diagnosis?
Not exactly.
Okay.
The psychological community was really split. Some argued for temporary insanity,
Okay.
triggered by the stress and Madame Lancelin's abuse.
Right.
Others focused on the sisters' intense bond,
Yeah.
suggesting they might have been suffering from something called,
Shared delusion.
shared delusion or folie à deux.
I've heard of other cases of folie à deux,
Yeah.
but this one is particularly chilling
Oh, yeah.
because of the violence involved. So can you explain what that is
Sure.
in layman's terms?
Imagine being locked in a room with someone,
Okay.
and this person constantly whispers that the world is out to get you.
That everyone is plotting against you.
Right.
After a while, you might start to believe it too,
Okay.
even if there's no evidence.
Right.
That's the power of shared delusion.
Oh.
It's this phenomenon where 2 or more people, often in a close relationship,
Yeah.
isolated from the outside world,
Right.
come to share a set of false beliefs.
So they just reinforce each other's
Yeah, they're distorted reality.
stored reality. So it's like they were living in their own little world,
Right.
cut off from everyone else.
Completely cut off.
Yeah.
And in the Papin sisters' case, it seems like Leah, the younger sister,
Yeah.
was really heavily influenced by Christine,
Okay.
who had a stronger personality
Right.
and might have been experiencing paranoia.
Makes sense. I read that even before the murders, Christine was known to be more headstrong,
Right.
more prone to these outbursts, whereas Leah was quieter, more submissive,
Exactly.
and they lived and worked together.
24/7.
Yeah. They were each other's only companions.
Right.
It was the perfect breeding ground for this shared psychotic disorder
Right.
to take root.
Okay, so this shared psychosis, combined with the abuse they may have suffered,
Right.
that painted a pretty complicated picture for the jury.
It did.
So how did the court ultimately rule?
Well, in the end,
Yeah.
the jury found the sisters guilty of murder.
Oh.
However, their sentences reflected the complexity of the case.
How so?
Leah received a 10-year sentence,
Oh.
while Christine was initially condemned to death.
Wow, so that's a huge difference.
It is.
So the court basically acknowledged that Christine played a bigger role.
Right.
But could they survive apart?
Sadly for Christine, the answer was no.
Oh, wow.
Being separated from Leah devastated her.
Wow.
Prison records show just a rapid decline in her mental state. She became fixated on reuniting with Leah,
Okay.
writing these desperate letters,
Yeah.
and even having what was described as a fit, like almost reliving the attack.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it was this psychological episode,
Wow.
this terrifying echo of the violence she had inflicted.
Right, yeah.
She actually tried to gouge her own eyes out.
Oh my God.
It's tragic.
It really is.
It speaks to the depths of their shared psychosis.
Yeah.
And the trauma that Christine was experiencing. She was later transferred to a mental institution,
Okay.
but the damage was done.
Right.
She refused to eat wasting away until she died in 1937.
Oh, wow.
It's a stark reminder of how trauma can manifest in different ways. The devastating impact it can have on the human psyche.
What about Leah?
Yeah.
What happened to her after she was released?
Leah's fate is a bit more of a mystery.
Okay.
She served 8 years, was released, assumed a new identity, and seemingly vanished into thin air.
Vanished.
Vanished.
So there's no record of what happened to her after prison.
Well, there are conflicting accounts.
Okay.
Some sources say she died in 1982. But a French filmmaker claims to have found her living in a nursing home in 2000.
Hold on, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're telling me that she might have lived a long life after all of this?
That's what this filmmaker believed.
Just hidden away from the public eye?
Right under the radar.
Wow. It makes you wonder what was going through her mind all those years.
Right. The guilt, the trauma.
Yeah. Did she ever find peace?
Did she ever regret what happened?
Yeah.
It's impossible to say for sure.
Right.
What we do know
Yeah.
is that the Papin case had this ripple effect
Mm-hmm.
that extended far beyond the immediate tragedy. It became this cultural phenomenon.
Right. It became a symbol.
Exactly. A Rorschach test for society's anxiety.
Yeah. What were some of the interpretations that came out of this?
Yeah. Think about the context.
Yeah.
This was 1930s France.
Right.
The scars of World War I were still fresh. The Great Depression was looming.
Yeah.
Social tensions were high.
Right.
The Papin case, with its themes of class conflict, female rage, psychological breakdown, seemed to tap into this collective anxiety.
It's like the case provided this lens through which people could examine their own fears about the world around them.
Exactly. For some, the Papin sisters became these symbols of the oppressed proletariat, pushed to their breaking point by a cruel and unjust system. Others saw them as cautionary figures, a reminder of the dangers of repressed emotions and the dark potential that lurks beneath the surface of ordinary lives.
It's amazing how one case can be interpreted in so many different ways.
I know.
It really speaks to the power of the story.
It does.
What's the biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, the Papin case underscores the importance of understanding how complex human behavior really is. There's rarely a single cause, a single explanation for acts of violence.
It's more of a perfect storm.
It's often a perfect storm of individual psychology, social pressures, circumstance, and even just random chance. We may never fully comprehend what drove Christine and Leah to do what they did, but the case serves as this reminder of the fragility of the human psyche and how vulnerable we all are to the pressures of the world around us.
That's a really powerful insight.
Yeah.
And it leaves us with more questions than answers.
It does.
Was this a crime of revenge? A desperate act of self-defense?
Maybe.
Or just the tragic unraveling of two minds pushed to their breaking point?
It's tough to say.
It's tough to say.
Those are questions you'll have to grapple with on your own.
Yeah.
What's so compelling about this case is that it defies easy answers.
It really does.
It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we live in.
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job of unpacking this really complex case.
I think so.
And disturbing case.
Yeah.
What I find so fascinating is that there is no simple explanation. No easy answer. And maybe that's the point. The Papin case is a reminder that sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that force us to question everything we thought we knew.
It's true.
Yeah, it really makes you think about,
it does.
Sanity and justice. And
it really does.
The limits of human behavior.
Absolutely.
It's a case that even today continues to fascinate.
Oh, yeah.
And disturb.
It stays with you.
It does.
That's for sure. And that's partly why it became such fertile ground for artists and intellectuals.
It wasn't just the true crime aspect.
It was what it said about society, about the human condition.
What were some of the interpretations that came out of this?
Well, think about the context. This was 1930s France.
Yeah.
The scars of World War I were still fresh. The Great Depression was looming. Social tensions were running high.
Yeah.
And this case, with its themes of class conflict, female rage, psychological breakdown, it seemed to tap into this collective anxiety.
It's like the case provided this lens for people to examine their own fears.
Their own anxieties about the world around them.
Exactly.
Yeah, for some, the Papin sisters became these symbols of the oppressed proletariat pushed to their breaking point.
By a cruel and unjust system.
Exactly.
For others, they were more cautionary figures.
Yeah, like a reminder.
A reminder of the dangers.
Yeah. Of repressed emotions.
And the dark potential that can be lurking right there.
Yeah, beneath the surface of ordinary life.
Right. It's amazing how one case can be interpreted in so many different ways.
It speaks to the enduring power of the story.
What is, I guess, the biggest takeaway for you from all of this?
The Papin case, for me, really underscores how important it is to understand just how complex human behavior is.
There is rarely a single cause.
Rarely a single explanation for acts of violence.
It's this confluence of factors.
It's often a perfect storm of individual psychology, social pressures, circumstance, and even just random chance.
And I think we may never know what truly drove Christine and Leah.
But it does serve as a reminder of the fragility of the human psyche and how vulnerable we are to the pressures of the world around us.
That's a really powerful insight. And it leaves us with, Gives more questions than answers.
Yeah, it really does.
Was this a crime of revenge?
Was it a desperate act of self-defense?
Yeah.
Or was it the tragic unraveling of two minds pushed to their breaking point?
I guess those are questions we have to leave our listeners with.
I think so. What's so compelling about this case is that it defies these easy answers.
Right.
It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the society we live in.
I think we've done a good job of unpacking this really complex case.
Yeah.
What I find so fascinating is that there is no simple explanation.
There isn't.
I guess the Papin case is a reminder
that
sometimes the most unsettling stories are the ones that really force us to question everything we thought we knew.
Absolutely.
Well, that is it for this deep dive.
Fascinating case.
If you are interested in learning more,
there's so much information out there
about Christine and Leah Papin.
There really is.
And their crimes. Be sure to check out the links
in the show notes.
Below. And until next time, stay curious
and keep exploring.